a few guests. We have Chris Maynard from the Golf Course Commission. We have our Parks Department represented. Jesse, our COO, is here. We have Alderman Brown, and we have our Finance Director, Robert, here. So I'm going to start by asking to accept the agenda.
I so move.
Second.
Okay. I would like to add something to the agenda. I would like to add Chris Maynard is going to give a short synopsis of the Golf Course Commission. He is currently the chairman of that commission, and he will give us a short summary of what their activities and that sort of thing right now. Do I hear a motion to add that to make that amendment to add that to the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all in favor of the agenda as it stands with that addition? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye, that has passed unanimously. So Chris, just hold on. Let's do the minutes first. Acceptance of the minutes. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes from our last meeting?
I so move.
Second. I was
Okay.
just making sure I was here.
Okay, any additions, deletions, changes? Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes of our last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I think we had one of, no, we don't have any abstentions. We were all here.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris, I'm going to turn the floor over to you,
Okay,
and
and I think y'all have, I believe, a copy of the budget for the coming fiscal year. Things are mostly good at Country Hills. And I've been on the commission, I think, for 4 years. And the first month I was there, we had to borrow $60,000 from the city to get us to positive cash flow as the golf season started. Well, and the one thing that we wanted to do without fail was make sure we paid that back before the end of the fiscal year. Next year we had to borrow 30. It's getting better. And, same thing, pay it back. But the last 2 years, we have not borrowed any money from the city. And we're pleased with that the city does not have to support, day-to-day operations at Country Hills. And, and that's important to us. So we've been able to fund some things in the last couple of years we have not been able to do. We bought a couple of pieces of equipment, used equipment, but good serviceable equipment with good life. This year, we've tried to address some deferred maintenance issues. And, we, at the end of the fiscal year, we expect to have $269,000 cash. Now, out of that comes $40,000 that I think the Finance Department has approved as a supplemental expenditure for some of these deferred maintenance things with regards to the facilities and the golf course. The other thing that we're trying to do is retain $70,000 through the winter time, so we don't have to come back to the city for that line of credit. But we are holding off on other improvements until we see the outcome of this cloud that's hanging over us with the arbitration for the partially collapsed roofs due to snow and ice damage on the maintenance building in February of 21. And the insurance company's probably apparently never gone to arbitration, I think, before, and they don't know what to do. But maybe we heard last evening, maybe in July, we'll be moving toward possibly that arbitration. We feel a responsibility on the Golf Commission. If that building has to be replaced, we may not be able to fund all the replacement, but if we've got some cash, we feel that we need to hold on to it to contribute something significant toward that replacement, if that's what it turns out to be. And so you've got an operating budget for the coming fiscal year that again shows positive cash flow for Country Hills. We are a bit conservative on revenues, but we're more aggressive and probably on the expense side. And some of that reflects the increased fuel costs for equipment, golf carts, and certainly we're expecting increased chemical costs and fertilizer costs, some of the things. And we've got some increase in there for our employees as we, in these challenging labor markets, as we try to hold on to our employees. And we've got a really good core group of employees that have got longevity. And And they've found over the years how to stretch things out and make things last and have to make some tough choices sometimes, but hopefully we're in a situation where they're not having to make as tough of choices as they did. We have, again, the operating budget shows positive cash flow with those considerations. And, we're optimistic that that revenue may come in stronger than what we've actually budgeted for, in line with what we've seen the last couple of years, but we want to be conservative on the revenue side. One of the things that we're doing really this year, maybe for the first time, and it's on the last couple of pages of that document, I think that you have. We have been aware in the Golf Commission and the golf course and our management company that works with Country Hills, that there are some larger capital expenditures that Country Hills will not be able to fund. And we think that that needs to come out from the shadows, so to speak, and that we need to share that with you. And I think for us to sit back and assume, well, we'll never get that approved or it won't be approved, I don't think we're doing our job. I think we need to identify these items. We need to give a priority to them and share them with y'all. And it may get, and it's kind of what's one significant project a year. It may get funded, may not. We hope it does, because the one we're asking for this year is an original piece of equipment that's our irrigation pump system. And, just as kind of the heart is to the body, an irrigation pump is to the golf course. And it's not just kind of growing grass. It gets more involved in the summertime. If that pump, 1989 technology now, original piece of equipment, increasingly difficult to find, parts to repair something like that. If that pump fails in the middle of the summer, we don't have the ability. One of the touchy things about these are bent grass greens, and you got to control the temperature and the moisture in the summer. And when you get in the dog days of summer, you got no air moving over these greens. You've got to go out and take temperatures and moisture and at times syringe these greens. If you don't have pressure on that system, syringe those greens, you can lose them. And if you lose the greens, you lose the golf course. I mean, the golf course is all about the greens. And so we've identified that as our priority project. And I think you'll see from the management company an estimate in those documents of $245,000 to $265,000 to replace that irrigation pump with current technology. And, those are the things that I just wanted to share with you tonight. Again, good news and that we haven't asked the city for money. On the contrary, we've been able to do more equipment replacement and deferred maintenance things. And that we are sitting on some cash pending this arbitration cloud hanging over us. But we are sharing with you the fact that, we have a major capital expenditure that needs to be addressed. And it's at the heart of the golf course operation.
So Mr. Maynard, what do you think the life of your current pump is? Do you think, will it last through the summer? You think you'll be fine till next summer?
We've got to make it last, because I think in those documents, it says there's an 8 to 12 month lead time to get a replacement.
Oh.
And so we've got to make it last. And we got to figure, we've got to do that. And I think we'll get through this summer. But we do feel like we need it for next summer. We need the replacement for next summer and try to put that concern to rest if we can. But it's got a long lead time. I mean, just like a lot of other things.
Chris, you mentioned 40,000 for, is that the reserve?
No, there's a supplemental approval has been given to spend $40,000 of our money to do some deferred maintenance on the golf course and the building and the clubhouse.
And then the 70 is the reserve for the leaner months.
Yes, to get through the winter.
Okay, so and then past that, we have about 159,000 left out of that.
Yes.
What is your plan for 159,000?
Well, I mean, we could look at it one of two ways, I suppose. We could say, well, maybe we need to put that toward a pump. But what we have done is said we need to perhaps put that toward the building.
Okay,
That depending on how the arbitration is settled and what we get out of it, you know, we'd like to get enough that the arbitrated amount would pay for it. If it doesn't, you know, we stand ready to kick in to replace that building. It's apparently the oldest structure on the entire property
do
is
you
this
have any
building.
idea how much it would be to replace it?
We've had an estimate, it's probably several months old, so I'm not sure how good it is, but I think, I think it was about 275,000, something like that. That sounds, it's a few months old.
So to replace it would be 275. Do we have any idea, Jesse and or the mayor, how much that we're gonna get out of the arbitration at all? Have they made an offer?
We'll
at
either
all?
get it or we won't, right? They'll either pay the replacement cost or they won't.
Wasn't it offer 10,000? Is that where we are?
Yeah, they had a
Oh,
original
you're
offer.
kidding.
Oh, well.
And that was just to shore up, just because some work was done to shore up the building to keep it from continuing to collapse. So they offered to pay for some of that.
So,
We've said if that's all, let's roll the dice.
well, I'm just saying,
Oh, yeah,
thinking
we
about
agree.
worst case scenario, if we have to completely replace it, we would have to use at least part of that 159 for that,
Mhm.
which means that we would be at square one to replace the pump. And you think that you can get through this season,
I think we have to, because I think the lead time of the new pump is such.
it's
that it'll
12 to
be-
18 months,
Yeah,
right?
it's gonna be next spring to get a replacement.
Mhm.
And there's, I'm assuming, a time of year that's better for taking on the task of replacing it.
Well,
Like you don't want
The
to do it in
critical-
your busiest season, right?
the critical period is the summer, and that's kind of, you know, maybe it's June through mid-September or something when the heat stress can occur on the course in total and specifically on the greens. So, you know, that's why it's identified as the priority, and we would hope to have it replaced before June of next year. You know, it's 8 to 12 months lead time. Well, we're kind of up at the end of that period, if you will.
But you didn't request that in your current budget, is that right?
We're requesting that as it's not part of the operating budget.
Right,
We
right.
we do want to make that request of the city as a major capital expenditure in the new fiscal year for Country Hills.
Which is the right way to do it.
And-
It's not an operating cost, it's.
Right, it's a capital
it's-
expenditure, yes, exactly.
And where would the money come from?
It's our
It's a
general-
bummer, but it'd be
And we
general
have from
fund.
the general
Because we're
fund.
general fund.
Then we wouldn't, if we include that, I mean, it would be part of the,
But we don't have it.
then we wouldn't be in the black.
So I absolutely appreciate Chris bringing this to us,
Yeah.
and we've had conversations, he's brought it to us in the past also, and so I appreciate him reminding us of this.
Where do we cut to put it in there so we have a balanced budget? Because right now, we have a balanced budget, Chris. We're only a couple $1,000s away from a non-balanced budget if we
We spend every
had this
dime.
huge expense.
I know I can't be
That's where
bringing
we
you an easy
should.
question.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
would it be possible for us to consider this at the mid-year review in
Is
like
that too late?
January?
And then you don't get your pump until later next fall, right? Because we can't order it without the money.
That's
You know,
correct.
Then we got another
Without the
summer at
application.
risk, I guess.
Right.
Well,
I'm looking for any direction.
I mean, is there any wiggle room in the budget where we can find $250,000? That's my question.
We do have a strong possibility that our projections for the current fiscal year will be under by about $500,000. And that's no criticism to Robert, because Robert has been
Conservative.
estimating very conservatively.
Our revenue numbers, right?
Sales tax revenue.
Looking at, I've looked at it the past couple of days, and if we continue to go what we've done, around 13% above, we should end up about $500,000 more than what we had anticipated. If we continue that 13%, I just showed Jesse a story about how new home sales dropped 17% this April compared to the previous April. So we have some possibilities, but nothing that I really want to pin down quite yet.
When do we get our first glimpse of post-COVID year-to-year comparison? Was that this month? Am I remembering that correctly? Like,
Yes.
Year 21
Yeah.
and 22.
Well, yeah.
what was our sales tax revenue comparison? I don't.
Oh,
I don't think it's in
have
there.
that.
I don't think
Yeah.
So you got FY20, FY21, and FY22.
And what's our percentage? Oh, we did still grow.
Yeah, we're still.
And
growing.
this is post, I mean, this is like back, no, this is,
That-
not. This
so-
is,
So I guess a good way to say it would be the first impacted month of COVID impacted month would be April of 2020. And then as comparison of that, we were down 60,000 for the year before.
right, so this
Uh,
is like a back to normal number, 21. Well, we don't
Yes,
have,
but
we don't
it
have
increased.
normal, we're not doing.
Yeah,
normal,
it increased
but-
pretty heavily. So
And then we have,
We're still on the upswing now.
but from,
over
we,
that, we're
we-
108,000.
yeah, 100,000, not the 400,000 that we were previously.
Correct. Combine
experiencing.
those two, and that's how much greater we collected in April compared to COVID-19. COVID-19 impacted April.
What is this percentage change between the 1.5 and the 1.6?
Not a good
Yeah.
thing.
That 8%, I'm thinking. Oh, were you talking about?
Between
Yeah,
these
I'm with
two.
you. I'm with you. One sec. 5, 3, 6, 7.1%.
And your projections for the fiscal year for the new budget are the growth was at 2 point something.
It's equal to what we anticipate finishing this year collecting, 2.5% above that.
Just sales tax,
Correct. Just sales tax.
which is
So,
I think
pretty
the-
conservative.
I think the
Yeah, I mean, it's a
mid-year is probably
22% jump.
where I'm sort of landing. Again, the hard part about that is.
It's
you
a
gotta order it.
gamble.
Yeah, you gotta order
it's
it.
a gamble.
It is absolutely a gamble.
But we could always, Mayor, we could always add an amendment to the budget between now and mid-year too.
We can do that too.
If we see the sales tax tracking higher, property taxes, et cetera.
Or state the sales tax.
So that would be a possibility. I
What
mean,
would change with the
I don't
state
see
sales
where
tax?
we have room in the budget without, without something else, sacrificing something else right now
Yeah, I think you're
to
saying-
include
so-
that.
So state sales tax goes up approximately, what the state sends us goes up approximately the same amount of what our local sales tax goes up, a little bit lower.
Okay, that's what I thought. So when they're gonna, yeah,
Yeah, but 13% increase in state sales tax isn't a big, huge number.
right, exactly. So from a financial perspective and not understanding the longevity of the equipment, I don't know what the equipment, I just understand it's important. From a financial perspective, for me, I'd like to see 3 months, April, May, June, and see what the growth over last year looks like to get an idea of if we're on track, if we're going to be able to maintain that growth, because it's been phenomenal and exceptional and not something that you should plan on continuing. And at that point, from a financial perspective, I would feel comfortable amending the budget to include this expense if the numbers show what we're hoping they would. And
Well, that's about the
But-
time frame. We're probably gonna maybe know something about the arbitration.
And then
award on the
is,
billing.
how does
agree.
that, what does
Sure.
that do for your timeline? How
Well,
much of a gamble is it if we wait 2 more months?
I think
2
we
more
could have the
months?
pump before the stress of next summer. Now, I don't know where this is, wondering about alternatives, and I don't know whether this is a good idea or bad idea, but I'm just gonna put it out there.
It's an idea.
It's an idea. We've been holding this money, as I indicated, back kind of pending the resolution of the arbitration. You know where I'm going with this?
We borrow the money from y'all.
Well,
Yeah.
The pump is more critical to the operation of the golf course than this building we've
Barn.
got propped up, frankly. If we took 150,000 of that money, then we need 100 from the city to do the pump. Now we have nothing in reserve for the building, but we would address the building, pending the arbitration in the next fiscal year. Y'all got hard choices. I guess we've got choices we need to make, which is the most critical. Well, probably addressing this pump, given the lead time, rather than, we'd continue to operate in the propped up building, I guess.
The propped up
Chris?
building will hold 2 years.
Chris, why wouldn't you use the 269,000 for the pump? Knowing that, I know
Well,
you,
40 of
I know
it-
you have it, the 70,000 in reserve for your leaner
40 of
months.
it's spent.
Excuse me?
40 of it has been approved to be
Okay, less than
spent.
40,
Less than
okay.
40.
So, I mean, this is just a scenario,
Mhm,
okay?
mhm.
Use the 229,000 for the pump. You have a line of credit, I'm talking about the 70 now, 70,000, the line of credit up to 100,000 with the city.
What's wrong with that?
So if you need that line of credit, you still have that available for your leaner months if you need it. I mean, is that something that might work?
Well, I
Did you
think,
hear what I said, ma'am?
I think it could work. I mean, we've got the point where we didn't have to go to the city and we're kind
I-
of loath to give that up, but
I
it's
know
all about
that,
choices.
but
There's
the- but
hard
it's-
choices for everybody.
But
in
it's
this.
there for a reason.
Yes,
It was set
yes,
up for a
yes,
reason.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
Chris, you spend too much time in real business. I don't want money sitting in the bank when we have bad roads.
Yeah,
I'd rather pave those roads.
yeah.
I don't want money sitting in the bank when we have a risk like this. And I think that probably what y'all should go ahead and do, and we can work on this, is go ahead and order the pump, knowing that we have enough money to pay for it in y'all's reserves. Plus, would we have to add in?
Maybe about 20 grand we would have to add.
Do you have to pay for the pump when you order it? Or do you-
No, you
partial down
typically
payment?
doesn't. I mean, it's probably, I don't know the terms, but it's probably
sorry.
something down. It could be 30% down or something like that. I don't know what those terms are, but something like that is
Yeah.
reasonable, I
Okay.
think.
So
And-
with
Because
the
we really-
idea that the pump arrives in March or April of next year, ideally it'd be February. And then at that point, between the time you order it and the time it arrives, we'll figure out where the other 20, 30, or $40,000 is coming
Right.
from.
Mhm.
But right now, we can't hit the budget. That's not an option right now. I mean, that's not an option for me. I don't know about the rest of the
I
committee or the
would-
mayor.
I think I would be willing to look at it again in 2 months. So we have 3 months data.
I like the mayor's idea, but we gotta get the thing
Actually, I think it's
ordered.
idea.
And, yeah, okay, we gotta get the thing ordered. Because our quote's not gonna last forever either. And then it's gonna go up
It's
another,
going up.
with
Yeah.
inflation,
Yeah,
every
yeah.
day, the clock's ticking
I
on
mean, this
that.
sounds like an emergency to me. I
Yeah.
mean,
$75,000 roughly you can order, you can get ordered.
I would think so, it's 30%. Yeah, I would think that we can get it ordered and we've certainly
I
got the
would go
wherewithal
for
to
it.
do that.
Yep.
I would go for it.
Do you feel, well, you have a board that would need to vote for this course of action. correct?
Mhm.
So we're offering you a gentleman's agreement that if you order it, we'll back you
Mhm.
eventually.
But you have the backing of $100,000 sitting there too,
Yeah.
if you need it. I mean, that was the whole purpose of that.
Right,
Mhm.
line
right.
of credit. Huh?
Have to pay that back.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. But then they'll be into their more productive
no
months at
interest.
that point.
Yeah, just making sure.
No interest.
I mean, I don't,
Depending on the math, we may have to bring something back to the board sometime between now and when it arrives.
Yeah.
Requiring an appropriation, because
Or an amendment.
I can't sign a contract and I can't commit the city to pay money that isn't appropriate.
Mhm.
Okay.
okay, so we're not voting on anything right now. We're
Right.
just putting that as a possibility and a good solution.
Jesse, I can't really see you. Are you comfortable with this? I'm trying to read your face, but it's covered up by
I
a
don't think
chair.
you guys are comfortable with
You know,
this.
it's unfortunate that you have to order parts 12 months in advance. And I guess the predicament that we could be in if the park isn't ordered and it goes bad
Right.
is probably a worse predicament than coming up with 30 or 40 to supplement during the
That's
winter time.
right.
And I believe there's a line of credit that's already set up. so
Yes,
that
for
we can
100,000.
Supplement in that
Mhm.
time, should we need to.
Mhm.
And Mr. Maynard's probably right, the arbitration is probably going to be a separate issue anyway. It does seem to be pressing, so I think it's a fair way since we have to order it so far in advance.
And what we have done to prop up the cart barn will hold for 2 years.
Might as well get you snow.
Yeah, I mean, if,
Or and
yeah,
I.
they're big. I
But
think
we just talked about how we're not doing normal anymore. So
Mayor,
I-
are you in agreement with this too?
So I am.
With the solution?
So here's my question for Robert. Robert, can the golf course commission, can the golf course operator, can the golf course staff buy the pump without action from the board?
You mean Boma?
Without action?
I think that they would have to amend the upcoming fiscal year's budget to include the additional expenditure, and then they would be able to, yes.
Do they have to put it out to bid?
Yes.
Eddie, we're talking about using the cash that we have on hand and going ahead and ordering the irrigation pump and using the cash on hand for the pump instead of the building, believing that the pump is a greater priority for the golf course than the building may be.
If your greens die, the building's useless.
Yeah,
Then-
we're out
then
of
we're starting to talk
business.
about lost revenue.
I mean, we are out of
Talk about-
business for that period of time if
Well-
that happens.
Lynn said, I asked him, I said, do you have a contingency plan? Last night I asked him, do you have a contingency plan if the pump went out?
It's,
And he said, we can always buy parts and fix it.
that doesn't sound.
So, it's not so obsolete that they can't fix. Now, the fix may be $50,000 or $60,000, but
Oh,
there is that contingency,
Yeah, I thought he was having trouble supporting that, what he describes as 1989 technology.
yeah.
What's the lead time to get parts though? It's not.
I mean, it's gotta be the same.
It's not gonna be 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I remember
No.
You
about
can't drive down
10
to
years
Ferguson's.
ago, Keith, you might remember this too, that we had that pump had a part go out on, I have no idea what it was, but I was the liaison to that commission that time, and it took about a month to get the part. I don't remember what it was.
Mhm.
It was hot when it went out. And I remember the greens,
They had hand water greens.
yeah, they were hand
Basically,
water
you got to the
greens.
point where you were
Dragging
having,
tanks around, hand watering greens, just to save them. And that's about 10 years ago.
sounds like, yes, sir.
Mr. Maynard, I feel like you're hesitant. Is it because seems high risk financially for the golf commission?
Well, it's a bit of a setback.
I
Uh,
understand.
since we worked to get in a position where, because if we, where we don't have to borrow money from the city to get us through those leaner months. And so, we're reluctant to step back in that regard, but I know everybody's got hard choices to make too.
Yeah, I know what you mean because you have really worked hard to change the financial position and it's hurtful and it feels risky to move away from the financial security that you've been enjoying. But I think that it's just you've got to trust us that we're going to come through for you eventually. I just, in the same way that it's risky for you, I don't feel comfortable just,
Not acting on
Saying
something
next-
right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
or saying that we've got to protect the investment in the golf course.
Yeah.
And as you said, life can go on without the barn being replaced, but
As long as it was, as we said, we get no more, damage to it, it could bring it down. I mean, buildings like that these days are metal structure. This is a wooden structure,
yeah.
built 30 years ago. And I mean that, and it's deteriorated.
Mhm.
And it protects a huge investment that the city's got in the golf course.
Yeah.
Like
I
You
know.
know, $200,000 golf carts.
And-
It protects those.
I will say that one of our commission members that works in insurance and saw the policy, I think, that we were woefully underinsured for the contents of that bill and all this equipment. I mean, I don't know, $200,000 or something. I'm sure. I don't know what the number was, but that's what that billing is in that billing. So it's one thing's the billing, the other thing making sure that we're,
I hate to end the discussion to this. We have a whole budget to go over
okay.
in the next 24 minutes.
Why don't Chris and Eddie and I and Robert and Jesse get together the next couple of days?
Yeah,
And we'll have a better idea what our financial picture is for next month as well as what their financial picture is.
And send us an email and let us.
but we'll back you. The city will, we own that. That's an asset to the city. Either we're gonna support the golf course and maintain it properly, or we're not.
Yeah,
We don't have. a
And we
golf
are.
course.
yeah.
And we are. I think we've made that commitment for years about that. So that's, that was one of the reasons we originally set up that line of credit
Right,
some
right,
years ago.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
all right, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you all for.
Mayor, did
Hear
you want
me out.
to participate in the budget with the stormwater?
Just.
Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is the ordinance 2022-10, ordinance amending of ordinance 2021-22 as amended to reflect adjustments to the city's 2022 fiscal year budget. Do I hear a motion?
I so move.
Okay, now this is the parks.
Donation.
The donation. Okay, I'm gonna amend that. We have to add $7,142 to this, to add to the parks budget for the Coca-Cola donation.
Okay. We did that last year too. Is it just late coming in
Yeah.
or getting approved or?
This is separate. This is an
How
additional.
much are we adding, Arlene?
$7,142.
They're-
Okay.
It's basically it's a rebate based on how many cases we sell.
Mhm.
So that's why it's not necessarily, there's a number at the first of the year that's budgeted, the code gives us for the contract. And then this is actually based on how much we sell throughout the year.
This is a new, by the way, this is a new
Goes to the scoreboard or
contract,
something.
but, well,
Oh, yeah.
it goes to wherever the board would like it to go. But that being said, this is a newer one. We've always budgeted on X, and this one's coming in for Y, a similar purpose.
Cool. Did I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gilly asked that to go to the operational portion of his budget for
Okay.
Mhm.
supplies.
So this goes to the operational portion of the parks budget, right?
Correct.
Under, what was it again?
Under the signs expense.
Signs, okay.
Signs and scoreboard.
My only comment is that I appreciate all these
Donations.
donations, all the individuals that are donating, everyone, Rotary.
Great. Any more discussion on that? Ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor of ordinance 2022-10? Say
Aye.
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 Aye, that passed unanimously. Okay, next on the agenda is ordinance 2022-11, an ordinance of the city of Hendersonville, Tennessee, adopting the annual budget and tax rate for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 20th.
June 30th is what that should say.
Okay,
Missed
30th.
me on my end,
okay,
just on the agenda.
2023. Do I hear a motion on the budget?
I so move.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the budget? I know we made a change in
Yeah.
our,
Given our last two meetings, we've got changes, right? Even the nonprofit line item.
the nonprofit line item.
That was, what other change?
Oh, nothing, I guess.
Yeah, it was the nonprofit.
Just the
Yeah.
nonprofit, you're right.
And then the parks budget, it was a wash, right, Jesse? The parks budget was a wash.
That's for this fiscal year 22.
Oh,
Yeah,
For the
we-
parks, yeah.
So we need to amend this to add I can't recall what that number was. Robert knows 13,000.
14,170.
And subtract as appropriate.
So it's an
We still
increase
have a
in
balanced
nonprofit.
budget with that addition. The bottom line is just gonna change to 40, instead of 18,842, it'll be 4672.
Okay.
Where-
The ending fund balance would be
The
what?
surplus deficit, the surplus will be reduced from
I see that.
18,842 to 4,672
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we don't have that.
on
in
this one,
package.
yeah, on this page.
Yes, one.
Yes.
Share one. There's only one.
Oh, we have to share.
Oh, okay.
So
Jesse, did you want to, oh, sorry, committee.
where does that leave the general fund? I'm sorry, but I'm just a little
So for unassigned, I'm sorry. I'm
unassigned
leaning over
fund
you here.
balance. That's fine.
If that's,
Why is this-
estimation depending on, oh, that's just saying the difference in revenues and expenditures.
Oh, okay.
Depending upon what's committed throughout the year, it can be close to that number. You know, it'll fluctuate pretty heavily. Take, for example, this 18,792,
Mhm.
of that number, likely that 11 million of it's gonna be unassigned.
Jesse, did you want to talk about the budget?
I did want to
Okay. I'm fine with that.
ask for consideration of additional appropriation for stormwater fund.
Okay,
Sarah went through and looked at the stormwater fund and feels that Public Works has the availability to spend another 1.33 million in stormwater. So we have available fund balance. And so she went back and looked at all the upcoming projects and what she'd need to keep in reserves. And another 1.33 million could be spent. So the Finance Committee would like to add that to the budget. It will not affect the bottom line.
Right.
It is fund balance that is sitting in the stormwater fund, it's its own fund. Had over $2 million sitting in that fund, so they think if they work hard, they can chew through it, do some more projects.
I would love
Yep.
to see that money
okay.
be spent, and I know that our public works department will spend it wisely.
What line item is that, Jesse?
Well, there's
It's
actually
not.
2 line items. Let me read them here. There is one for 200,000 for professional services. I believe that's 824. Is that correct? 824 professional services.
Okay,
And then there is drainage control. So yeah, it's 200,000 in professional services and then 1.13 million additional in drainage control. So
for a total of 1.33, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1.33.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll make that amendment.
Second.
Discussion. So it's a wash. It's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It won't hit the bottom
financially,
line. It's just
Yeah.
chewing through some available fund balance.
Mhm.
Any discussion?
I'm thrilled.
Okay, so we were spending the money that we have
Let's do
instead
it.
of keeping it in the bank.
It's meant to be spent.
Yes. Okay, all in favor of the amendment of the professional services of 200,000, drainage control of 1.13 million under the stormwater utility budget? Do I say aye? Aye. Okay, that passed unanimously. So that's an amendment to the budget. Okay, and that'll be in the final budget in 2 weeks for our first reading.
It'll be a recommendation that it'll just go forward with that recommendation.
Okay,
Included.
Yeah, the board will.
Okay.
I believe the mayor wants to speak to it in the meeting too, to make sure that the entire board's aware.
Since
Okay.
we didn't put it in the workshop.
All
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
all right. Okay, now we have the main motion on the budget. Any discussion?
It seems kind of strange that we're not discussing it more, but we've had workshops and we're all familiar. It's a financially sound document. I support it.
I agree. We have a balanced budget. No tax increase.
Of course, I have
We have some
previously expressed my concern about long-term, how this will work for us, but as a single year snapshot, this is good for me. And we've made progress with our general fund, and you can't do everything all in one year. So I'm happy with the progress that we've made. Baby steps. Well, these aren't even baby steps. These are big steps. Next year. We'll get more long-term
I'm good.
planning.
Okay.
Nice
So
job.
I'm pleased with we have a healthy paving budget of over $3
No.
million when you add up all the
We had to
sources.
We had to cut streets because we didn't have enough to fund the full inflated cost.
Yeah, so we put in the same budget dollars we had the previous year, but we're experiencing about 10% increase in cost right now. So with the same amount of dollars, we're able to do 10% less because of inflation.
Does that include the adjustment that we made mid-year for the paving budget? Because then we add
Yeah, so we were
500,000.
able to do all those projects on 500,000.
Mhm.
And there's a slight possibility that we may be able to do one more section of the street this year as Sarah's working through those numbers.
Good.
But yeah, so we have less purchasing power.
Wow.
So we still have the same amount of dollars out
Three
there, but it gets us
requests.
less road. now.
Right.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately.
we're
Understand.
not really sticking to the plan, but hopefully at mid-year, we now have all our hopes and dreams on mid-year.
Well,
We
we
need to
could
buy a pump
maybe-
for the golf course,
And
increase
hope that
the
we don't have
paving.
any other capital projects that raise its head, you know?
That's why we have the
Inflation
reserve.
is killing us.
Thank goodness.
And we're not alone in that.
And
But-
then we still have the 6% in there for the employee raises.
And that would always be my priority, because I feel like you have to invest in your people
Mhm.
first. That's your largest return on investment.
Yeah, so we have 6%, and then we were able to negotiate the health insurance to keep within the amount that we had budgeted with.
Woo!
That's awesome. Great.
That's a miracle.
That's awesome.
We're doing a kind of a hybrid where the city takes a little more risk on for the deductible portion. But it was able to keep our premium stable so that employees have a very small impact.
Good.
Okay, any other highlights that you want to bring forth?
I will just say that we will start working on paving streets as soon as the budget's passed. So Public Works just looked at the section of streets, I think the largest section of street. We will try and start July 1. We have some stormwater projects, but I think we'll try and start July 1 and get through as much as we can. I think staff feel supported through the budget. Costs, obviously, we all wish costs weren't going up the way they are, but
Oh,
they are.
But they are.
So I think the budget's doing a good job of addressing the needs of the city through the projects it's doing and taking care of staff at the same time.
any other discussion from our finance director?
No, just make mention as costs go up, as budgets go up. That makes any of these percentage reserves, those go up as well. Not just unassigned, but any other setbacks that we have, that amount is offset and increased too, so.
Are we ready to vote on the budget as amended? All in favor of ordinance 2022-11, an ordinance of the city of Hendersonville, Tennessee, adopting the annual budget and tax rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that has been recommended unanimously. Thank you. Committee. Other items, report on contingency funding. That's on.
For the page for the
A.
last,
Mine's under
almost
tab
last.
called A.
Page 16.
Yep.
Okay, got it. I thought that was it. Is this for Jesse?
Next,
Okay.
17. Well, both of them, both.
Yes.
Sorry.
So in this year's budget, fiscal year 23, we put in the capital projects, basically department, we put contingency account of, I believe, 525,000, I believe is what it is. And what we're trying to do with that account is make our capital projects more efficient. Happens, it's a good example of what happened with the inline rinks, is that they were spec'd with primer but no paint. And so the process to come back to the board to get approval for, like, that was a $40,000 change order, was the finance committee and then 2 readings at BOMA. So you can be 2 months into,
Yeah.
a process that needs to happen relatively quickly. And it could delay a job that does not, delay a project that's not beneficial to the city. So we just thought, how do we have some flexibility to work through items that come up, but do it within the purview of an adopted budget? So what we came up with was an idea to put a contingency, a line item in the budget, not per project, so that every project's not just open-ended to an extra 5 or 10%, but to throw an account within the budget as a whole. And then we established a framework for staff to work through, should we encounter a change order. We're going through a project and a steel beam needs to get put in that wasn't on the plans and the contractor didn't fit it and it's a legitimate change order. How do we process through that?
So it'd be like a pool?
Yeah, it's an account that it's an account line item that is sitting in our capital projects division.
And not
it's-
attached to a
And it's
particular
not
capital
attached
project?
to a
Gotcha.
particular project.
Okay,
So we said, well, if you're gonna do a $500,000 project, you really shouldn't have the discretion to use 525,000 of a contingency line item. So we established some thresholds to say, hey, if your project, goes up $5,000, how do you administrate that? If it goes up 10% of a project, how do you administrate that? So the last cap on here is per project cumulative. If a project goes to 10% of its cost, then we have to come back to BOMA and say, hey, even though we have money set aside in this account, we're at a point where it's 10% of the project cost, and it would require us coming back to BOMA. But if it's a $300 irrigation controller, we don't need to go and amend the budget for a $300 irrigation controller. Or in this case, if it was a $40,000 painting item, this would allow us to get approval from the mayor, and then notify the chairs of the Finance, Public Works, and Capital Projects Committee. Subject to the finance director having the money appropriated, and subject to the chief of operations approving it. And there would be a 24-hour notification period where the project manager would have to notify the chairs of the committee, have to notify the mayor, but then they could process through it if we have the funds available to do it. But if it gets to an excessive, 5-10% of a project, then we come back for a resolution or ordinance to BOMA. So it just gives some framework for staff to work through to be more efficient, but still allows some it allows accountability and internal controls so that projects aren't open-ended to whatever we have in that line item account.
okay, so is this gonna be a policy revision? Or is it gonna be an ordinance or a resolution?
Yeah, I
or
think
how
I'll
is
come
it?
to BOMA with a resolution,
Okay,
and that'll give staff a little more direction to say, hey, this is how we can.
with
how we-
the,
Yeah.
steps
With
involved.
this, with the actual policy guidelines
Okay.
that are in here, these threshold amounts in here.
so there's no need for us to vote on anything tonight.
No, you don't need to. I'll bring it to BOMA as a resolution. But just wanted everyone to.
That makes sense.
have a
I think
look
it
at
makes
I can sponsor it if you're looking for sponsors.
Sure.
I love it.
I do too.
Just making us
Just-
more efficient and
Yeah, and not
Makes
slowing
good-
down
Good
government.
sense.
Yeah, it puts the project manager in a tough spot where something comes up that they know they need to approve and BOMA may eventually approve it anyway. It puts them in a tough position where it takes 6 to 8 weeks to go through
That's
the
right.
official process.
Yeah.
Yeah, committee.
And we don't want to, we don't want to
first
stop
reading,
the fire station and say, hold up, we're gonna do
No.
a
Right.
change order, so.
particularly important with the inflation that we're experiencing in construction.
Yeah.
And I love that you're gonna pave immediately instead of doing it at 2 different time periods, because God knows what it'll cost in 6 months.
I mean, we still may have to break for the winter, but we're gonna start right away.
I agree totally with this.
And I would like to help sponsor it as well.
Count us all three.
Yeah.
Okay, next item on the agenda is sales tax report.
That we've already kind of looked at.
We already looked at
Do I have it? And I don't
under
have
B, the second B,
There you go.
it? I got two Bs. Oh, I see.
the
what
second
happened.
B.
I didn't, I only looked at the first B. Okay.
You had two of these? Good, I did too.
Mhm.
Ready?
Yeah,
Sure.
ready.
As hoped, the trend of, as I mentioned in the finance committee last month, Q4 of the fiscal year, Q2 of the calendar year is sort of a test of if this growth will continue. Dug into numbers a little bit more as a comparison over last year and the year before, just to see how much of that is inflation and what we're noticing across the board. And a lot of these months are similarly hitting somewhere around each month over month, similarly hitting somewhere between 5 and 7.5%. So, that 5.9% number for cost of living obviously is factoring in there at some point. But that being said, that doesn't really explain FY20 to 21, but neither here nor there. Just wanted to mention we're starting off on a really good foot with April at just over $1.6 million, which is a $108,000 increase over the April of 21, which in turn, if you'll notice, is 409,000 over April of 2020. So significant increase, but we're seeing our major jumps kind of level off a little bit. Whereas if you look down through FY21, the change year over year, 184, 69, 106, and then we see that increase heavily about the time we're comparing it to the COVID impacted months the year prior, 265, 269. Not as great for March, but that one's typically pretty low month anyways. That's February activity. No one's gotten their tax returns yet, and they've just spent all their money at Christmas. So we see a pretty good decrease there. But month over month, that last quarter was by itself $1.2 million. So we're hoping to continue that at least 100,000 on average over last year. If that does occur, that's looking at about 14%, 13.5% over last year, which would be almost 20% over what we budgeted. As you know, we're 2.5% budgeted over what we anticipate collecting this year. So we should not have quite as much of a jump, but that's a good thing. We're budgeting a little closer to appropriate.
All right,
I have hotel motel as well.
hotel motel.
So
The second.
pass that down.
Here's one.
Oh, we don't have it in here.
Right,
No.
right. We're still actually collecting some for April, but I do have a report on March there and I can say that April will anticipate collecting at least 30,000, if not a little north of that. But we've still got 3 outstanding.
So we're back
Checks.
to about where we started in 2020 before COVID, about,
If we're discussing March, we're,
well, not more, I was talking the other earlier.
oh, yes, yeah. We're pre-COVID numbers, correct. And we'll break 30,000 at least for April. We just haven't collected. We've got 3 outstanding that have got to get their reports in.
Perfect.
But that being said, yeah, that's really good news. And we're, even without those checks, we're over last year by $2,700. So
Right. Okay. Thank you, Robert. Okay. Anything else, committee?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, a second. All in favor of adjourning,